This morning, someone asked me, they said, Chase, or they didn't ask me, they said, you must be a morning person. And I thought to my head, and you must be a crazy person. And I realized, though, it's not that I'm not a morning person on Monday through Saturday, but I love coming to church. You're supposed to say, me too? Oh, good. You too? Oh, we're all in the same boat. I enjoy seeing your faces even when they're not smiling back at me. I love looking at you guys. I love seeing you. I love being here. We're closing out our series called Church, where we're learning about the church. Why do we gather together? What's the purpose? What's the point? We've kind of broke it down into 5 purposes. We talked about worship, talked about fellowship, we talked about discipleship, we talked about evangelism, and this week we're going to close out talking about ministry, serving. That's one of the reasons that we gather together, is to actually look outside of ourselves and serve the needs of other people. We started in week 1 talking about the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. I want to read the Great Commandment. It's a verse where Jesus was talking, and he said, here's kind of the Great Commandment. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. He said, but a second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. Loving our neighbor, that's what ministry is. Expressing our love for other people. And then the next week, we actually saw that not only did Jesus command us to do these things we call the 5 purposes of the church, but the early church in the book of Acts, we saw them fulfill these purposes. We saw that they were actually doing what God wanted us to do as a church. It says in Acts chapter 2, all the believers were together and had everything in common, and they sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Our love for others, expressed in the meeting of needs, that's what ministry is. That's what serving is. And that's one of the things that we're called to do. Jesus didn't just teach this to us, but he actually lived a life serving other people. We see in Matthew 20, talking about himself, he says, even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and give his life a ransom for many. So Jesus lived this out well. He taught it well. And what I want to do is I want to share a story that Jesus used when someone asked him, hey, can you explain this whole loving your neighbor thing? Like, is it just the people next door to me? Is it just the people in my cul-de-sac? Is it just the nice, friendly people? Can you just explain that to me? I want to know who is my neighbor. And Jesus said, well, I'll teach you about how to be a neighbor. So what I want to do is I want to share the story that Jesus shared when he was asked how to be a neighbor. And I want to teach us how to be a neighbor, and I want to point out a few things along the way of what I see ministry is. There's a few things that I think ministry is, and it would be beneficial for us to learn today. So I'm going to read this verse. I'm going to stand up so I can get my blood flowing, because if I start getting excited, you'll start getting excited, right? All right, thank you. I enjoy God's word and reading it, so let me read it to you. Luke chapter 10 says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Hey, teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Well, what is written in the law? Jesus replied. How do you read it? So the man answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You've answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. Just love God perfectly and love people perfectly, and you'll live forever. But the man, wanting to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus shared a story. He said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him? It's like shrimped. I don't know. They stripped him of his clothes and beat him, and he went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road. When he saw the man, he passed on the other side. So to a Levite, when he came to the place, he saw him and passed on the other side. But when a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. So which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robber? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, go and do likewise. Go and do the same. So let's look at this story and some other places in Scripture, and I want to just point out a few things that I know to be true about ministry. The first thing, if you want to take note and write some things down, which you do, because it's good for you, the first thing is ministry is messy. Say that with me. Ministry is messy. Not always, but ministry is often messy. It says that he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on him. Let's start by where this man was doing ministry? Where was he serving this man? It was on the side of a road, in the ditch, in the mud. A dangerous road. We know that because the man that was in need just got robbed and beaten up, left for half dead. And as the Samaritan was going about his day, doing his thing, we're going to call him Good Sam or Sam I Am. That's how I'm going to explain him the rest of the day. So when you start hearing me say Good Sam or Sam I Am, I'm talking about Good Samaritan. Samaritan's a hard word to say for me. So Good Sam or Sam I Am was going about his business, doing his thing, and came alongside of a guy, and he decided, I'm going to go serve that guy where he is. There are some times in life where people walk into the doors of church that are in need, and we can minister inside the building. But there are times in our life where we need to actually go and serve people. You can't just do ministry inside of a building called the church. I think God calls us to meet the needs of people where they're at. And just like this Samaritan, he went to where the broken and the hurting person was. He went and served him, but not just where he was serving. That was a messy place to be. But how he served him. Did you see what happened? The man was bloody, left half dead. And Good Sam, or Sam I Am, got down on the ground, got his hands dirty, cleaned up his blood, started to bandage the man, and then poured oil and wine on him. This was a mess. This was not a clean, easy, simple little way of serving somebody. He got messy. But I also see something else. I see who he served was pretty messy. See, Good Sam is a Samaritan. And it's my assumption that the man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho who got left half dead, beaten, was a Jewish man. And he's on the side of the road, and what you need to understand is that Jewish people despised and rejected Samaritans. They did not say kind things about Samaritans. They were not BFFs. It was like the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears, okay? I don't know if that's true, but it was worse. It was way worse than that. And it wasn't because of anything that the Samaritans did. It was just who they were. They were born this way, and they were hated for it. They were called half-breeds. And so as I sit there and look, this Samaritan chose to meet the needs of somebody that despised him. And as I was thinking through the story, I wondered just personally, if there was at any point in time where the Jewish man was beaten and left handed, opened his eyes and saw who was caring for him. And my assumption that if there was moments where he looked up and was like, who's that? Oh, that a Samaritan? And I wonder if there was words that were spoken that aren't to be said on a stage. I wonder if he started to think, man, what does he think? And I wonder what was going through the mind of Good Sam when he walked by and said, this man that I'm going to take care of, I bet you he would not take care of me if I was in the same place. But he chose to do ministry when it was messy. We see Jesus do this. Jesus, you hear Good Samaritan, you hear the word Samaritan, you may think of the woman at the well, where one day Jesus was going and he decided to minister to the needs of the woman at the well. He talked to a Samaritan, and he was Jewish. And not just a Samaritan, no offense, ladies, but he talked to a woman. And in his day, this was a big deal, a woman Samaritan, and he asked her for a drink. But he ministered to the needs of people. It didn't matter what they looked like or who they were. We see him get messy. Jesus, one time, it says that he was going to meet the needs of somebody. He was healing a lot of people, and one time he healed a leopard. Not a leopard. A leper? Not an animal. You know what I'm talking about? You know what a leopard? You didn't laugh at leopard. I slipped it, and you didn't even notice it, right? All right, he went to heal a leopard, and what the thing was, they were untouchables. You did not touch them. You did not hang around them. But Jesus chose to heal this leper by touching them. He could have just spoken and said, hey, you're clean. Go. You're healed. But I think what he wanted us to see is that sometimes ministry is messy. I think it's important that we understand this, that if you only love and serve people that deserve it, you're not acting like Jesus. Everybody say, ooh. Oh, you felt that too? If you only serve people that deserve it, you're not acting like Jesus. Jesus cared for people in messy situations. The thing is, serving and meeting the needs of people means you're going to meet the needs of people. And people have problems, and their problems aren't pretty. That was cool, right? I was going to say that was pun, like fun, but I couldn't find a P word quickly enough. People have problems, and they're not always easily solved. They're not always fun to solve. Sometimes it's messy to minister to people. That's just one thing that I see as I look at this story, that ministry is sometimes messy, but if we only serve people that deserve it, that earn it, that are like us, that look like us, then we're not acting like Jesus. Jesus was often criticized because he hung out with prostitutes, drunkards, and sinners. And they thought, well, this man must be okay with what they're doing because he's eating with them. Those sinners, he must be a sinner too. And she's like, no, I'm loving on people that are in need. Because ministry, sometimes it can be messy. The other thing I see here that I know about ministry, it can be messy, but ministry often is time-consuming. Ministry is time-consuming. It says, then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Good Sam was going somewhere. Good Sam was not an ambulance. It wasn't like they're like, excuse me, we have a man lying down on the side of the road. Can we get Good Sam up here to fix him? No, Good Sam said he was traveling along. He was on his way to do something. And in the midst of his day, he saw someone in need and decided to take time out of his schedule and help him. But we also know that it took some time. It said that he bandaged him up, put him on his own donkey, and took him to an inn. And then it says that he continued to care for him there, stayed the night, because it says the next day he went to the innkeeper and he said, hey, I'm going to leave you with some money to continue what I have started, continue to care for this man, and I'm coming back. Now, maybe he was just going to come back because he was already going that way. Maybe he was going to come back just to pay the innkeeper. But maybe he was coming back to make sure everything was going okay with the man that he found on the side of the road. He was willing to put some time into it. And people that have problems that aren't pretty, most of the time, oftentimes, problems aren't solved overnight. There are times where you can serve someone and do ministry by just writing a check and say, hey, I'm going to meet the need that someone has by just writing a check. It's quick, it's easy, it's done. But there's often times in life where you're placed in a situation where God says, I want you to minister to the needs of that person, and it's going to take some time. It's not an overnight fast food kind of a thing that you can do. Ministry sometimes is time consuming. And I just want to say this, that if you only serve people when it's convenient for you, you aren't acting like Jesus. If the only time that you serve someone is when it's convenient, when it fits into your pretty little schedule, when it's good for you, then you're not acting like Jesus. Sometimes it's convenient. You're driving somewhere and someone needs a ride. Hop on in, let's go. Convenient. Sometimes you're babysitting and I call you up and say, hey, you want to take 2 more kids? You're already babysitting anyway. And you say yes every time I call, right? Good. I'm just looking at some of the teenagers to see who's shaking their head, yes, right? Sometimes it's convenient. You're already serving someone. But oftentimes when we're called to love others by meeting their needs, it takes some time. It's not always convenient. And I would just say if the only ministry you ever do is when it's convenient for you, you're missing out. You're not acting like Jesus. Jesus was often going out of his way to help people. Do you think it was really convenient for Jesus to feed thousands of people? Like, you know how much time that would have taken? Like, just think about it. 2 times in the life of Jesus, he saw thousands and thousands of people and said, let's feed them. It takes a long time just to put plates together for me and my 3 family members in my house, right? Maybe you guys go really quick and have a great system in your life, but it takes time just to feed people, and he did thousands and thousands of people. That took time. It wasn't very convenient for them. They had their own plan and own thing that they were doing, but Jesus looked at the crowd and said, I have pity on them. I have love for them. I want to serve them. Do you think it was convenient for Jesus to go to the cross? I don't. I don't think it was very convenient. Jesus had things he had planned. There was even the moment right before he was arrested, which was right before he was crucified, that he's in the garden and he's praying to God. And he says, if there's any other way, if there's an easier way, if there's a more convenient way, could we do that? But ultimately, Jesus knew that it was about the Father's will. And he said, not my will, but your will be done. It's not always convenient for us, but God doesn't call us to convenient or comfortable. But I also see that as we serve other people, we're serving the Lord. I think this is an important truth to remember. Jesus was talking about how at the end of life, we're going to stand before the King. And he said this in Matthew 25. He said, then the King will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father. You're on my right. Did you get it? He then looked to those on the left. We're not reading that part, though. He said to those on his right, man, I'm really trying really hard this morning, okay? The 9:15 crew was on it. Is this message not funny? Is it not good? Is it not exciting? Are you not happy to be in God's house this morning? I'm sorry. We'll get someone better next week for you, all right? Just kidding. Oh, thank you. That's what I needed. Sympathy for me. Thank you. I'm just kidding. He said, then the King will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, and the kingdom you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. And these righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you? When were you thirsty and gave you something to drink? When, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothes? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth. When you do it for one of the least of these brothers and sisters, you were doing it for me. We don't love other people to inherit eternal life. We love other people out of the response for the love that Christ had for us. When we put our faith and trust in Christ and what he did on the cross for our sins, it compels us to love people. It changes who we are. And so we then go and love people. And when we love people, we're actually loving Jesus. When we serve people, we're actually serving Jesus. It may be messy. Ministry is not always convenient, but it's for the Lord. And I know one last thing I want to share with you about ministry is that ministry oftentimes costs you something. It cost you something. It said he went and bandaged the wounds, pouring oil and wine, and then he put the man on his own donkey. He brought him to an inn and took care of him, and the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave it to the innkeeper. This man gave his time. It wasn't always convenient, and he also gave his skills. He got down on the ground and began to bandage this man, began to clean him up. He had some skills, and he saw a need, and he knew that he could meet the man's need. Ministry is when we love other people when they're in need, using our time, our skills, and our resources to serve people. That's what ministry is. And he got down on the ground. Not only did he take time, he used his skills, but it says he used his stuff, his oil and his wine, and then his bandages. Some people think that he ripped clothes, his own clothes, to wrap them around this man. And then we clearly see that beyond just his own things, he put the man on his donkey and used up his mileage. And then took him to an inn and gave him money. Now, I've been studying some financial stuff, and I want you to know this was a really bad ROI. That means return on investment. I've been practicing for this message. I had to ask Ron last service. He was sitting right there. I was like, it's ROI, right? This was terrible. It was a total loss for this man. He was not recuperating any of this stuff. It wasn't convenient for him, and it did not benefit him in any way, shape, or form. And I'm just here to tell you, if you only give when it benefits you, you aren't acting like Jesus. If you only serve when there's a benefit for you, you aren't acting like Jesus. When you only love people when there's a good return for you, then you aren't acting like Jesus, and you're missing out. Ministry is when we express our love for other people in need, using our time, skills, and resources to meet the needs of people. Sometimes there's a return. Sometimes you help someone, and they help you. But real ministry is serving with nothing in return, serving someone else with no benefit to you. Jesus modeled this in what I'll call the greatest exchange, or maybe you could call it the worst exchange in all of human history. Just depends on what side you're on. Jesus gave us hope, life, freedom, forgiveness of sins, love, grace, mercy in exchange for the cross and our junk and our sin and death. He gave up his place in heaven, came down to earth, gave up his life so that you and I could have true everlasting life. It was a terrible exchange for Jesus. It was the greatest exchange for you and for me. Jesus knew how to serve and minister to people when there was no benefit to him. So did Good Sam. And so should we. And so as a church, we try to provide opportunities for you to be able to do ministry, to be able to serve people, to be able to meet the needs of people. If you sat down in a chair today, either you sat on it or it's sitting right next to you, you'll see a little flyer talking about Thanksgiving baskets, where we're meeting real needs of people in our area. Locally, we're reaching out and saying, we're going to meet the needs of people right here in the Lansing area. And you can help in that way. You can give financially, buy a turkey. You can give some of your resources, go and get some non-perishable items to fill the rest of the Thanksgiving box. You can give some of your skills and pack a box. You can give some of your time and come and help deliver for those people that can't come. That's just one way that we're saying we want to locally meet the needs of people here in Lansing. But not just locally, globally. This year, the missions team says we're going to give you a 2-for-1. We're going to provide more opportunities for you to serve. So in a couple weeks, you're going to hear us talk about Operation Christmas Child. We're going to ask you to pack a shoebox for kids in need all around the world. And we're going to express love to them by serving them and ministering to their needs by packing a shoebox. That's why missions teams exist. That's why this year we started a community outreach team, because we said we want to answer this question. If our church closed its doors tomorrow, would the community even notice or care? And our hope is, we're working on it, that they would say, yeah, we can't lose River's Edge, not here, not in this place, because they're meeting real needs of people in our community, real hurts. They're ministering and loving people in a real, tangible way. Ministry, expressing our love for others by meeting the need. And by Friday afternoon, I had wrapped this entire service up in a nice, beautiful bow. I was really ready for it. I went home. I was excited about what I had done, and I worked hard and ate some food and sat down, hung out with my family. And then about 10 o'clock came. My wife was going to go to bed because she's old. And I was like, I'm young. She's not. I know 10 o'clock's pretty late for us, actually. And I was like, you know what? I don't have anything going on Saturday. I'm going to stay up and watch Netflix. I'm going to minister to there's no ministering done in that. I'm going to watch Netflix, and I wasn't ashamed of it. I didn't have anything going on, and I sat down, and I went to turn the TV on, and my mind started going. And I felt like God was stirring something in my heart, and I was like, no, ignore it, Netflix, that's what you want to do. But I sat there, and I went and got a notebook and a pen, and I just felt like God was saying, listen, Jesus didn't just teach about ministering to people. He showed it. Jesus didn't just preach it. He practiced it. I felt like I was saying, I want you to show them ministry. I want you to leave them with a visual illustration of what ministering and meeting the needs of people looks like. And in this verse, in this story of Jesus, where he gave a real good visual illustration to his disciples one day. See, in the story we just read, he just taught it. He says, you want to know how to love your neighbor? Let me teach you about Good Sam. But there was another time where he says, hey, I want to teach you how to serve others, how to meet their needs, how to love people. And I'm not just going to teach it, I'm going to show you. And this story popped in my mind in John chapter 13. It says, so he got up from the table, Jesus did, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, poured water into a basin. Then began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel he had around him. And after washing their feet, he put a robe on again and sat down next to him and says, do you understand what I just did? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I've given you an example to follow, so do as I have done to you. And I felt like Jesus was saying, I want you to do something. I want people to walk out of the door remembering this. And then I was like, yeah, Jesus, I hate feet, right? And I don't use the hate word often, but this is a good time for me to use it. Feet are gross, especially man feet. They're disgusting. It's true. I spent 6 months in Cambodia with one other friend of mine, and while we were there, we shared a room, not like a house. It was a room. I mean, there was multiple rooms, but this was a room that we shared. And he oftentimes would clip his toenails with fingernail clippers in our room while I was there, and I would always get so mad at him. And he always was wondering, Chase, why are you so frustrated with me clipping my toenails? I was like, first of all, you got some man feet, and they're gross, and they were big feet, okay? And I don't have big feet. I got cute feet, all right? And his feet were not cute. And he's like, why you get so mad? I said, because you're using our fingernail clippers to clip your toes. And I'm going to take those fingernail clippers and clip my fingers afterwards and then put food in my mouth. And that's gross. I have a problem with people's feet. And God knows this, right? This isn't like a surprise to him. So I was like, God, I don't like feet. Feet are gross. Feet are messy. I don't want to deal with that. That's disgusting. I'm going to puke on the stage if you want me to wash people's feet. And then I was like, oh, snap. But you're telling people that sometimes ministry is messy. It's not always easy and pretty and perfect. I was like, yeah, but it's 10 o'clock on Friday night. I've already worked this week. Don't you want me to spend time with my family? I mean, if I change up my message now, I got to go rewrite it. I got to find a new PowerPoint. I got to figure out how to wash someone's feet. There's not enough time. I don't have time for this. Plus, we have 2 services now, and they don't let me preach as long as I want anymore. Now I'm on a time schedule. And then I remember, you can't tell people that sometimes ministry is time-consuming if you're not willing to take some time to serve. So I was like, all right, one more shot, God. This is just me and God talking, not like all on my couch when I really just wanted to push Netflix on my remote. And I felt one more thing. I was like, yeah, but it'll be embarrassing. Some people in the room might actually think I'm cool, and I don't want to lose that. You've heard me say before, I care so much about what you think about me. Too much most of the time. I was like, that'll be embarrassing. That'll be super uncomfortable for me. Like, I can't do that. I can't wash someone's feet. But I remembered, sometimes ministry costs you something. And you can't go teach this and preach this if you're not willing to practice it. So I was like, all right, God, I'll do something. I'll bring up my buddy on the stage. Where's my buddy at? Where is he? There you are. I was like, hey, switch sides. Yes, last week he's over there. Everybody say hi, G. Hi, G. This is my buddy, G-Man. Gideon, you hop up there. His name's Gideon, but we call him G. I got to get something, buddy. You worry about that. Don't fall. All right? I'll get in trouble for your mama. You want to look at them or look at me? They're scary people. Don't look at them. Don't look at them. I'm going to leave you with a little picture of washing some feet. Jesus, he took off his disciples' Velcro shoes, the socks. It said that he took a towel, wrapped around his body, and he began to wash their feet. Now, how many of you would be willing to wash feet like this? Raise your hand. One person would be willing to wash. These feet are cute. Don't tell him that because he doesn't like to hear that, right? These feet are cute. And they're little, they're cute because they're just like mine, all right? They're pretty feet, I like them. They're cute, and they're little, and they're clean. And I know this because my wife makes us shower at least once every other week. Like, she makes sure that we take care of ourselves and clean ourselves. This is not a big deal, right? You guys would wash feet like this. You can go, buddy. Hop on down. Take your shoes, socks. Get out of here. You did great, bud. You did great. Thank you, Gideon. Now, how many of you think that was a cop-out? Yeah, that's what I thought too. But truth is, sometimes God says, I want you to do ministry, and it's going to be easy. It's going to be cute. It's going to be simple. It's going to be clean. And it might make you look good. Listen, that benefited me. Because some of you are like, oh, that was such a sweet moment with your son. My wife's like, oh, that was cute. Those are my boys. And it's going to benefit me. She thinks better of me now. But sometimes God says, I don't want you to just wash Gideon feet. I want you to wash Charlie feet. This is our youth pastor, Charlie. And the thing about Charlie is, his feet are big. And did I tell you that I hate feet? Did I say that yet? Did I talk about it? I said that. And this is not very comfortable for me. This is embarrassing for me. This is a little disgusting. But Jesus, it said that Jesus got down, took the socks off. Oh, man. I see, the thing is, these are pretty clean. Like, to be honest with you. Like, he's showered in the past week at least. But Jesus, it said that he bent down and he washed the feet of his disciples, 12 of his disciples. And they wore sandals all the time. And they didn't have running water where they could go and take showers whenever they want. I'm hoping that he showered at least within the past 26 hours today. But it said that he bent down and he took water and he began to wash their feet and give them a foot five. Oh, I touched his toenail. Oh. The good news about Charlie is I know at one point in his life he did get a pedicure. And so I don't know what that means for his manliness, but I know that here, you can leave now. Thanks. Really? You're going to clap for him? Did he do anything good? No. I started thinking about Jesus, and I realized there was one last thing he wanted us to learn about ministry. Because I did not like that. Some of you thought that was funny. I thought it was disgusting. It was very uncomfortable for me. I didn't like it. It's embarrassing. It's weird. But I felt like Jesus was saying one last thing, that ministry is not about me. Guess what? Ministry is not about you. It's about our obedience and our love for others and doing what God has called us to do. And there are times in our life where God's going to say, listen, I got some Gideon feet for you to wash. It's going to be easy and simple and nice. And there's times in our life where God's going to provide opportunity to us to wash some hairy, big Charlie feet. And it's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be messy. It's not going to be easy and quick. It's going to take some time out of your life. It's not going to benefit you. It might actually cost you something when God calls you to start meeting the needs of people in their life, because ministry is messy and it costs something and it's inconvenient to us, but it's not about me. And it's not about you. It's ultimately about God. I want to reference one last verse. We're called to let our light shine before all men, that they may see our good works, they may see our good deeds, they may see our love for others, they may see our serving of others, they may see our ministry, and give glory to God. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about our obedience and our love for Christ. And it says that after Jesus washed his disciples' feet, he taught them a lesson. He says, I, your Lord, your teacher, the King of kings, the Lord of lords, I got down on my knees and I served you. No king would do this. No man would do this. This was a job for slaves and servants, but Jesus says, I'm your teacher, I'm your Lord. You should be washing my feet, but I want to do something. I want to flip this world upside down, and I want to show you that real Christianity, real following Jesus, real discipleship is about loving and meeting the needs of people that don't deserve it, when it's inconvenient and when it does not benefit you. This is what Christ was trying to teach us. And after he finished washing his disciples' feet, he says, I want you to go and do the same. So that's my prayer for you, that's my charge for you, that's my motivation and encouragement for you today, is go and do the same. Don't go wash feet, that's weird. But remember this picture, remember this illustration, let it stick in your mind, and as you go throughout your day, this week, somebody's gonna pop in your mind that needs something. God's gonna place someone in your path as you're going about your day, and it's gonna be inconvenient. And I want you to remember that Christ calls us to love people, to minister to them, to meet their needs, using our time, our skills, and our resources to love people. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, we thank you for the love that you have for us. We thank you for the gift that you gave us in your Son. And Lord, my prayer is that we would leave here remembering that you have called us to something far different from what the world wants us to do. Not to live for ourselves, but to live for you. Not to just worry about our own needs and our own wants, but to lift up the needs and wants of others. You've called us to love others with the same love that you have given us, that you expressed and given your Son to us. You've called us to take that same love and express it to the world around us. And may we be a church that is known for loving people, not just that walk into our doors, but that we're a church that goes where hurt is, where pain is, where people are. And we meet their needs and we love them. And we remember that at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's about you getting all the glory and praise.